Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Roberto Corona. I am an Italian anthroposopher and astrologer, and in this video we're going to talk about the upcoming lunar eclipse in Virgo on March the 3rd, which represents a full manifestation of what was set in motion by the solar eclipse of February 17th, and we're going to see why is that. With this eclipse, we officially enter Pisces season, that is the last third of winter, and in this regard you can see down below here Rudolf Steiner's zodiacal virtue to meditate on during the sun stay in Pisces, which is magnanimity that becomes love. Now this eclipse completes the first sequence of eclipses of the year. The second season is going to take place in August. And since the previous eclipse was a solar eclipse in Aquarius, this means that by definition it was a new moon. This eclipse instead, being a lunar eclipse in Virgo, is by definition a full moon. And as such, it is the full manifestation of the process which began with the previous eclipse. Now, before moving on to the chart, let's take a look at the latest changes in the sky starting from February 17. On February 18, the Sun entered Pisces, whereas on February 20th, a very important date, we had the perfection of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, with the United States Supreme Court like clockwork rejecting the tariffs imposed by Donald Trump. We have extensively discussed about the tariffs failure related to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, and this just happened right on the perfection of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. On February 26, Mercury is going to turn retrograde. I'll leave you the link in the description box down below if you want to learn more about it. But this retrograde is very important because Mercury rules the lunar eclipse in Virgo. We also know that the following day, on February 27, Mars perfects its square with Uranus, and this is a turbulent aspect that also appears in the eclipse chart. Now, about Mars, as you can see here, just the day before the eclipse on March 2nd, Mars changes sign and enters Pisces, thus contributing to create, as we will see, a stellium in the sign. Now, this is a lunar eclipse. That means that it is different from a solar eclipse. And regarding eclipses, Rudolf Steiner said that during a solar eclipse, harmful astral forces are expelled out into the cosmos, whereas during a lunar eclipse, such forces that are present in the cosmos have access again to the Earth. And in particular, they can access the Earth through the cone of shadow that the Earth projects on the moon during a lunar eclipse. For this reason, we are exposed, especially in our thinking, to harmful thoughts of a romantic nature, especially because Mercury this time, the planet of the mind itself, is retrograde, debilitated in Pisces, and is the ruler of the eclipse itself. Now, eclipses are different also according to the lunar node on which they happen. And as we will see, this moon is located in close conjunction to the south lunar node, the so-called dragon's tail, that is traditionally considered to be a sort of little Saturn. And this means that it brings a destructive quality, or if you like, it tends to bring major endings in our lives. Moving on to the chart, we find the eclipsed full moon at 12 degrees and 53 minutes Virgo in the starry image of Leo, conjunct with the star Cur-10, the rib or hip of the lion, a very interesting star linked to the faculty of prophecy. And near the moon, you can also see the south lunar node here. Now, on the opposite side, we have a stellium in Pisces standing out, formed by the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, which of course has just entered the sign. Now, the series of winter stelliums we've been talking about since the beginning of the year continues. So we had a stellium in Capricorn, then in Aquarius, and now we have another one in Pisces. Now, being in Virgo, the eclipse is ruled by Mercury, which is retrograde, is combust, and moving toward the sun. Now, we examined in the dedicated video the particular condition of this Mercury retrograde, which is separating from its conjunction with Venus and is about to form a very long trine with Jupiter, which will tend to support it. And finally, as we have already indicated, the following stand out. We have the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries, of course, and the square between Mars and Uranus. Let's now tackle the meanings of the chart, starting from the physical meanings. The mutable Earth of Virgo refers to work, the production of goods, the industrial sector in general, and the medical industry in particular. A lunar eclipse in Virgo on the South Node is all about sudden news, because it is a full moon, leading to the end, closure, or conclusion, because it is happening on the South Node, of specific industrial policies, because it is happening in Virgo. And in particular, policies that are based on illusions, given that Mercury, the ruler of the eclipse, is retrograde in Pisces. Now, through the perfection of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, we're talking about the end of a certain illusion linked to tariffs, or rather, the protectionist policy by the MAGA movement of the industrial and manufacturing sector of the United States. In particular, in this regard, if we go back about 9 years to 2016, when eclipses were always happening on the Virgo-Pisces axis, we find the period in which, during the election campaign, Donald Trump promised precisely this policy through the introduction of tariffs, and apparently he was the first US candidate to promise an industrial policy of this kind since 1930. Now, this policy, evidently based on more than a few abstract illusions, seems to have reached a point of reckoning. It should be noted that this less than promising result had already been predicted, or if you will, prophesized, and in this sense, the star curtain connected to prophecy may actually indicate the fulfillment of what was already predicted. Now, on a personal level, we can easily translate the same collective dynamic from a more individual work perspective. So we have illusions of stability, illusions of security, illusions of protection in our job that the eclipse is now shaking. Now, as a matter of fact, from a psychological perspective here, we are called to deal with the consequences of this disillusionment. The eclipse bursts the dream bubble introduced by Mercury retrograde in Pisces. You can watch the video in the description to learn more about it, but basically, the awakening of the eclipse brings with it a certain amount of emotional drama that is clearly indicated by the stellium in Pisces. So we have a lot of mutable water energy, too much water energy in the sky that represents unstable emotions that can degenerate into chaos. So in my opinion, the best way to channel all this Pisces energy is through active compassion, sharing the difficulties and suffering of others. So to channel these energies positively, and this indication of compassion introduces us to the spiritual meanings of the chart. Now, in fact, from a stellar perspective, the full moon is located in the starry image of the lion, which in astrosophy is the constellation of the angels, the spiritual entities closest to us in the celestial hierarchy. Now, Rudolf Steiner shows us that today the angels inspire the hearts of human beings with a threefold impulse, urging us towards, number one, an active compassion for every creature who suffers. Number two, towards a total freedom in the sphere of religion and personal beliefs, because we all have a different and unique spiritual path, and 3, towards the complete overcoming of materialism to cultivate a true spiritual science. We can find this impulse to compassion by looking at the position of Venus, which is in Pisces, and this means that is a Venus in exaltation that tends toward universal love. Venus is again also very interesting from a heliocentric perspective. I remind you that in astrosophy, the heliocentric point of view is the point of view of the sun. That is the point of view of the gods, basically, of the solar community, of the spirits of the planets. Steiner called the spirits of the planets the spirits of form that correspond to the Elohim of the Bible, who have their center of activity precisely on the sun. Now, from a technical point of view, we use the aphelion and perihelion of the planets, that is, their points of maximum proximity and distance from the sun, as well as the planetary nodes that are basically similar to the lunar nodes, but are the nodes of the planets and not the nodes of the moon. Now, from this point of view, Venus and Jupiter are central to understanding the chart, given that heliocentric Venus is closely conjunct the perihelion of Jupiter, and heliocentric Jupiter, in turn, is closely conjunct the north node of Saturn, and Saturn is very connected to the chart from a heliocentric perspective. So what does it mean? So from the divine perspective, the sphere of Venus, which is the sphere of the archangels, connects to the sphere of Jupiter, that is, the sphere of the spirits of wisdom, through Jupiter's perihelion, or the point at which Jupiter is closest, and we might say interested, so to speak, in the affairs of the sun, of the solar system itself. Here we have a reparative process, a fixing process from the spirits who guide the peoples, because the archangels are the folk souls, right? They are the spirits who guide the peoples, who draw on the sphere of wisdom to reharmonize through this wisdom the relationship between nations. And how does that happen? Now, in turn, Jupiter, or the spheres of the spirits of wisdom, connects to the sphere of Saturn, that is the sphere of the will of the Father, through the north node of Saturn. Now, the nodes of Saturn are very, very important because they represent the historical memory points, so to speak, of the entire evolution of the solar system. And in particular, the north node indicates where the evolution of the solar system is called to build, to create new impulses that are favorable to evolution. Therefore, from the divine perspective, we are witnessing a process in which the sphere of the archangels, the sphere of the spiritual entities that guide the peoples, draw on the forces of wisdom to reorganize themselves according to the evolutionary purposes of the solar system. So let's now move on to the astrocartography of the eclipse. As you know, we can use this technique to see where in the world the eclipse is going to be stronger. Basically, we can see here where the eclipse is going to take place on one of the 4 angles that are the most powerful points of a chart. Now, in red, we see the ascendant line affecting China, Myanmar, Thailand, and Malaysia. In green, the midheaven line that falls in the middle of nowhere. In yellow, the descendant line affecting Canada, the United States, but also Cuba and Panama that lately are under the spotlight for geopolitical reasons. And in blue, the IC line affecting Central Europe and part of Africa. If we compare this chart with the actual path of the eclipse, we can see where the event will be stronger. And in this picture here, taken from the website timeanddate.com, as you can see, the eclipse is going to be visible mainly involving Alaska, Australia, and New Zealand. Therefore, the Arctic issue could resurface in the coming days. As always, thanks for watching. If you want to support my work, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell not to miss out on future astrological insights. I am Roberto Corona. See you in the next video.